The world has always been ruled by those who were power hungry. They were on a lookout for places where they ruled over regulated sections of society. This has been the norm ever since men felt the need to overpower, hence started inequality. It's almost difficult to frame a definition for inequality as it operates on different levels. What might be seen as poor in one country would count as rich somewhere else. But if your living standards are far below those around you, you might consider yourself poor in local context. But for the purpose of understanding, let us go with the most accepted definition of inequality. Inequality is the accumulation of wealth and power in a few hands. But why the discussion now? Researchers found that the COVID-19 crisis has made many existing world of work inequalities worse and exposed new ones. A particularly significant trend is the growth in wage and income inequality because this fuels other forms of inequality. There's more, the consequences of growing wage inequality go beyond those directly affected, rippling through all socio-economic developments and hampering economic recovery and growth. The Great Resignation and the labour shortage happening across industries after the pandemic is indicative of social stigma revolving around hierarchy. Many people are finding it difficult to sustain in a working environment where their efforts are not recognised and valued. This trend is slowly creeping to other parts of the world, thus justifying its objective to put an end to the generation of inequality that has been persisting. Inequality exists in various forms, be it in employment, social mobility, family, or gender. Studies have unveiled the relation between economic inequality and social mobility. But inequality is not a recent trend. It has been in prominence ever since the world came into being. But humans were so eager to improve in life that they least cared about the outcomes of their egotistic self. Inequality as a concept gained popularity ever since the Great Depression, which promoted the world economies to concentrate more on their own well-being rather than be a part of any cooperation. The brute, hegemonistic realities of geopolitics are being revealed through nationalist interests portrayed through wars, riots, and political strife. It is difficult to measure the levels of inequality as different countries have their own place when it comes to inequality. The current situation is not different from how it was prior to the various globalization efforts. Inequality boomed as deregulation, economic liberalization, programs, and other policies created opportunities for the rich to get richer. Hence, it cannot be said that with development comes equality. In actuality, it works in the opposite way. For instance, the Gini coefficient, a measure of income inequality, shows there's even more disparity between the rich and the poor now in South Africa than there was during apartheid. This has been explained by French economist Thomas Piketty in his book Capital in the 21st Century. He came up with a simple idea to explain how inequality in terms of wealth distribution takes place in an economy. According to him, when the return of investments is higher than the rate of economic growth of the country, more wealth gets accumulated in the hands of a few, who own the means of production, as compared to the labouring class.
So, the growth performance of the US economy in the past 3 decades has not been terribly good. The per capita GDP growth has been 1.5% or something. So, if you get 2/3 of that to the top 1%, there's really very little left for the rest. And, that's not a good deal for the rest of the population.
What is the current trend? Let us look into the latest report to understand how inconceivable has equality become. A new billionaire is created every 26 hours according to Oxfam. Globally, inequality is so extreme that the world's 10 richest men possess more wealth than 3.1 billion poorest people. Global inequality has gotten worse, with the richest 1% grabbing nearly 2/3 of the $42 trillion of wealth newly created since 2020. This is nearly twice as much money as gained over the same period by the remaining 99% of humanity. At least 1.7 billion workers now live in a country where inflation is outstripping wages, showing how we have already lost the race before it has even started. The race to end poverty by 2023, it remains an impossible dream, a dream which inequality killed. More than 820 million people are now going hungry, most of them women who have to eat last and least. This is an example of the centuries of atrocities that have been committed to women by the name of gender inequality. These staggering numbers are difficult to comprehend, at least for a small population like us. But it is a precondition to understand the level of inequality before delving into the reasons for such a disparity. Inequality hurts businesses and relationships alike. It defeats the very purpose of education, which teaches one to imbibe qualities of equality, liberty, and fraternity, which are the key ideals held by many. But why did it exist in the first place? Economic inequality gives the rich an unacceptable degree of control over the lives of others. In an unevenly distributed society, wealthy people often end up in control of many aspects of the lives of poorer citizens, over where and how they can work, what they can buy, and in general, what their lives will be like. The extreme concentration of wealth can slow the pace of economic growth. Inequality undermines the fairness of political institutions. The political officers depending on contributions from the rich will always align with the wealthy, rather than with the public, creating a nexus between the haves and have-nots. Inequality undermines the fairness of the economic system itself. Equality of opportunity becomes a costly affair, as these people with few assets find it harder to access the first small steps to larger opportunities. It is widening the gap between races and genders. It fuels the unrelenting extraction and monetization of our natural resources, driving conflict and climate change. It serves the interests of the affluent by maximizing profit, solidifying control, minimizing cost, and relocating risk. This is what people, as well as countries, have been profiting from the alleged term called inequality. Inequality is very troubling, even to many of us who benefit from this inequality, that something should be done to reduce or eliminate it. But why should one think like this? Are there some reasons that force a person to think like this? Let's look into some of the reasons that can contribute to the equality in the world. Redistribution resources from the rich to the poor through tools like wealth tax can bring in a great change in the way the world works. But does it even work? Over the last 40 years, there has been a systematic race to the bottom on the taxation of the richest, driven by economic ideology and the capture of politics by rich elites. Elon Musk, one of the world's richest men, paid a true tax rate of about 3% from 2014 to 2018. Jeff Bezos paid less than 1%. Meanwhile, Aba Christine, a flower seller in Uganda, makes $80 a month and pays a tax rate of 40%. Half of the world's billionaires live in countries with zero inheritance tax for direct descendants. They have a $5 trillion tax-free treasure chest to pass seamlessly onto the next generation, building tomorrow's elite. How is all that fair and reasonable? The richest people have more wealth than entire countries. Such extreme power and influence in the hands of a select few who face little accountability is raising concerns that are part of a robust debate on whether and how to address extreme inequality. There are multitudes of inequality working at different levels. There are clear links between inequality and violence, incarceration, teen pregnancy, drug abuse, mental health conditions, and obesity. There are growing income gaps between young people and middle-aged people, between immigrants and Canadian-born citizens. As the gap between the two widens, they naturally get segregated. It's important to create space for people who haven't traditionally had as many opportunities. In our effort to be inclusive, many are in favour of diversity, equity, and inclusion (DEI) initiatives. In our current environment of growing inequality, can any justification be given to the rich who are holding on to power? These holdings of the rich are not legitimate if they are acquired through competition from which others are excluded, and made possible by laws that are shaped by the rich for the benefit of the rich. It has corrupted and polarised our politics and media. It is corroding our democracies. So it's high time that everyone comes together to stay put on the issue of inequality.